Hey, I'm Midnight. I've been coaching a Deadlock for over a year, and I wanted to make a guide on how you should lane and a lot of common mistakes I see while coaching. First off, I want to establish what is the most important part of laning and what I think people really misunderstand the most, which is your goal isn't always to break your enemy's tower first. Now, what do I mean by this? We'll say you are a 7 and an Ivy versus a Yamato and a Holiday. Yamato and Holiday are very strong laners, and their goal is to win lane and break your tower as quickly as possible, and to translate that lead into more souls on Yamato and some ganks and roams from Holiday to put our other lanes ahead. However, if you're the 7 and Ivy, you need to understand Ivy has great wave clear and she loves farm, while 7 also loves farm and has pretty good wave clear, so your goal really is just to keep blaze from your tower, don't let your tower fall, keep your tower alive, and just try to farm. Use the extra time you have to run boxes, then to farm camps. If you're not with someone who needs to win lane or a character that needs to push their lead to lane and you're against two characters that on paper just beat you, it's fine to just, again, clear waves, run boxes, and you can push a lead. Even just in laning stage, you can get like a 1k lead purely off out farming the enemies by like 8-9 minutes. Then you can translate that lead into a positive fight and into tower. But again, it's completely fine if you're playing against a super strong laner like Yamato. If you just don't give her the fight, you just push your advantage by, out farming her and just playing in side lanes, buying little defensives so you can't die, and you just take this lane really slowly and you don't let her get a lead in lane. That is what she needs to do to be able to come online. We're going to start off with some general notes, which the most important, basic, and easy thing that I see so often fumbled is please just shoot the orbs. And it's nothing more complicated than this. It's nothing crazy. Just if you see a soul orb, yours or the enemy, just take a shot at it. Get used to shooting them on a good timing, and just shoot the orbs when they come off the minions. Don't let yourself get denied. Also, another thing to go in tandem with this is you obviously never want to last hit a minion with the last bullet in your mag, so if you just have one bullet and your wave isn't clearing, you can just slide, use the infinite ammo to kill the minion, and then use your one bullet left to kill the soul orb. Next up is something that I think people make out to be really complicated, but it really isn't. It's power spikes and identifying the power spikes of your character. So for the majority of characters, the biggest spike in your laning is going to be when you get 2 points into an ability. For example, on Holiday, you get plus 65 explosion damage, which is very strong. On Doorman, your bell gets an extra 50 damage on explosion, 30 on impact. Sinclair, you get 13 full seconds off your bolts, cutting that cooldown in half. Viscous Spotter gets additional damage, additional radius. But then there are also characters like Dynamo where his main spike comes from maxing his ability, and the plus 30% bullet damage taken on hit really isn't that major comparatively to other, like plus 80 total damage on Doorman Bell. But it is something to think about, and every character that you're rushing 2 points into just one ability, it's because you want to play for this spike. Now, there are some builds that do go a little bit of everything, but no matter what you're leveling, another big point of your power spikes is your itemization. Again, I can't stress power spikes are very simple. A big power spike on this build is Mystic Shot because it's a 1.6k item. After you buy Headshot Booster, when you have another 800 souls and you're at 1.6k in total, you are weak and you don't want to fight then when you're saving for this big item. But then when you buy Mystic Shot, you're big again. You want to fight on that wave. You want to push your advantage. Another big spike is Extra Charge. Not because it's a big item, but because for one, in this build, you time it with when you get your 2 points in your powder keg, but for two, because it's giving you double powder kegs and just 2 more pieces of your biggest ability for poke. In all of these builds, you can identify spikes like this. Again, it's as simple as you're buying a T2 in lane. That is a big spike. If you're saving for Tesla bullets early, that is obviously a massive, massive spike. And then finally, the most obvious spike is just when you get your ult, or if you get your ult before your enemies, you should always try to leverage that wave and try to get a fight on that wave because it's a huge advantage. And the final thing I'll stress for the general notes is how important height is. I think people really don't consider how much having like bridge and bridge control matters. Most characters like Holiday, Viscous, Sinclair, any of these super oppressive characters, they really rely on having bridge control to be super strong in lane. So if you're able to shove wave quickly and take bridge control, it can be really big. And then if you have bridge control, when minions drop, just shooting them like right here, shooting them back here, so you can continue to get this bridge control. And then using your abilities so they both poke the enemies and clear the wave is really, really important, especially if you're playing a character that really needs lane prio, like again, these Viscuses, Holidays, Sinclairs. Trying to hold these angles from enemies and keep height for yourself can be super important. As far as wave management, a big thing I see people mismanaging is just how much they take trooper damage. You always want to play behind your wave because troopers do a very surprising amount of damage, and I'm sure if you go into your replays and you check trooper damage, it's much higher than you think. Just avoiding getting shot by troopers, playing behind your wave, making sure you're not fighting the enemy in a wave is super huge and something people really sleep on. It's definitely the biggest and most common mistake I see while coaching. And to utilize this trooper damage to your advantage, it's really good if you can clear waves before you fight. If you can get your wave shoved and then while your wave shoving fight the enemies, if they fight you while troopers are shooting them, it is great for more than one reason, not just just the damage, because when you're forcing a fight and you have troopers pushing into them, if you die, you aren't going to miss much. You're going to get reset, you're going to come back. If they shove wave, it's going to be pushing into you, or worst case, they actually know how to freeze and you miss like 2 or 3 minions of the next wave. However, if they die, they're going to miss the full wave you just pushed into them and then 1 or 2 minions of the next wave. So the fight just becomes very favorable towards you whether you win or you lose, and winning MOBAs is about taking the most statistically advantaged fights. I kind of touched on this before, but one of the reasons I said you should try to use your abilities to both hit troopers and the enemies is because the most important time you can use your abilities is either when waves are fighting, you use them so you can create space or so you can hit the wave and hit the enemy, or you use them after you've killed your wave and your wave is pushing into them to try to stop the enemies from easily hitting their wave. And just if they're showing, you know, you hit them with a crack shot, you hit them with a barrel, you're just trying to suppress them because they can't really shoot you back because they have to focus on killing the wave and not letting wave siege their tower. And then finally, a way to combat this, and just a good habit to have in general, is don't just stand in the open when you're hitting waves so you take a ton of poke from the enemies, especially if they're dot enemies like Inverness. You want to position yourself so you have cover in between you can just shoot the wave from a safe angle, and whenever you're trying to hit the wave, just don't give them a line of sight on you. This is something that will also just become easier as you practice. You know the exact angles, where's best to play, because I also see a pretty common mistake of people just hitting wave and they get beamed for their entire HP bar because they're just standing in the middle instead of playing around cover like they should be. Next, I want to talk about how you should be using your time in between waves, because this is also something I see people mistake a lot. What I suggest you get in the habit of doing is whenever you shove your wave or whenever both waves die, just take a second, look at timer, think, hey, our bridge buff's up, our box is up. I'll get into the exact timers later. If bridge buffs are spawning or up, it's great. We go grab that bridge buff. However, if boxes are up, I want you to calculate, okay, well, we killed this wave really quickly, so we have like, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. That's a great amount of time to go do a box route. You can grab these boxes, go in subway, whatever. I won't get into specific box routes. I do have a video on my channel about it, but it is a little subpar. But then also, the most important thing I want you to do is assess your soul count. Okay, how many souls do I have and what do I want to buy next? You have great downtime. It's like, okay, we shoved wave. We have time. Oh, I have 800 souls, and I know I have my extra charge spike waiting for me in base. That's a huge spike. Let's buy this, and then we can go back. Because soul awareness is also an issue I see a lot where people just let their souls get egregiously high, and really the best way to combat this is just to build the habit of checking your souls and being aware of your souls in between every wave and knowing what item you want to buy next always. And then finally, if you shove your wave, I want to talk about the differences between poking enemies, trying to hit tower, or getting boxes. The general rule of thumb I have is that if you don't have kill potential on your enemies under tower, or you can't get a significant amount of poke or siege tower, then you should just get boxes. If you're just going to be sitting here, like I see a lot of people do, and they kind of wait, and they maybe, if they're lucky, get an orb deny, and they do 70 damage to 7 farming from like all the way back here, and you just kind of waste your time and you're wasting your advantage, which I'll talk more about how to push a winning advantage in a second. But if you're not going to get any major poke, or you don't have any kill potential on the enemies, and you can't walk up enough to siege tower because they have decent wave clear, just walk to the side instead. And especially if you can use that prio to steal boxes from the enemy, it is so great. Now we're going to talk about how you should play the different states of your lane, being losing and winning, starting with winning. Like I mentioned before, if you're winning, first thing you want to do is get wave prio, then you can try to steal boxes. If camps are up, you can try to steal camps. If the sinner sacrifices are up, or vaults, it is amazing if you can steal these. With the soul value of buffs included, they give about a wave of souls, but you should never miss a wave to farm them. But the most important thing you can do with Elite, especially if you break tower before the sinners spawn, which again I'll get into exact spawns later, is it steal your enemy's sinners around the tower. That is a huge difference maker and very big for slanting your lead. However, aside from sinners, if you have the option to get real siege without taking a lot of poke, like you're winning by a lot, whatever, it is great if you can just hit the tower. If they allow you to just walk up and siege the tower, it is great. This is just in the caveat of they are strong enough to defend you from hitting tower, but they're not strong enough to get wave prio. And honestly, playing a winning lane is pretty simple. Where it gets complicated is how you play a losing lane. So when you're losing the lane, your main goal is just to stall. You don't want the enemies to be able to crash waves into your tower and take the guardian. So the most important thing you can do is just buy monster rounds. Plus 25% weapon damage to NPCs, which includes the candle troopers in lane, is huge for keeping the wave away from your tower and keeping your tower alive as long as possible. And then also the out of combat regen is great if you're behind. Next, don't be afraid to buy defensive. Items like extra regen, restorative shot, healing right are great. If at any point you use healing right and it stops you from missing a wave, it has already paid for itself. So really don't be afraid to use this item because it's so valuable. If you're below like 25% HP, I would say just buy it pretty unconditionally. Another two great items we'll be behind are Spirit Shielding and Reactive Barrier. I mean, in general, these items are good. I wouldn't say just to buy them if you're behind. If you're just into a double Spirit lane, Spirit Shielding is great. If you're into a comp with any amount of CC, try to force this item. 2.1 Spirit Scaling on the barrier is ridiculous. This item is amazing. If your lane has double CC, please buy this. If you're into Abrams, Bebop, whatever, this item is fantastic for surviving. And the final note is just don't ego fight. If the Yamato is 2k up on you, you're not going to win the 1v1, you're not going to win the duel. I've had so many times where someone's getting killed in lane and they get on mic and they say, hey, can I switch? I can't 1v1 these guys. And when you get behind, your goal isn't to 1v1 the enemies, it isn't to kill the enemies, it's just to keep wave away and don't fight them. If they're very ahead, you are never going to win, unless you can really leverage you having ult and them not, you're just not going to win a fight on paper. So your goal isn't to win a fight, your goal isn't to trade, it's just to stall. Stall for your enemy lanes to win, stall for your enemies to get to you, or if you're stalling, you can also grab some farm in the meantime, and maybe you just catch up passively. In general, I say 3 deaths is excusable in lane, 4 if your final death they dive you and then kill tower, but if you're dying 5 or more times in lane, you are making a major mistake. And you should go into replay and look at all those deaths and see, hey, like, am I ego fighting? What is the issue? Why am I continuing to die? And then finally, I'm just going to list off some important timers. First off, boxes and tier 1 camps spawn at 2 minutes. The first buff spawns at 5 minutes. At 6 minutes, tier 2 camps spawn. At 6 minutes and 5 seconds, you get your boost timer, which is also super important to monitor in lane and when the enemies have it. Then at 8 minutes, Sinner's Sacrifice and tier 3 camps spawn. Again, super important to try to steal their Sinners if you're ahead or secure yours if you're behind. And then at 10 minutes, 15, 20, and just every 5 minutes, bridge buffs continue to spawn and earn spawns. Something I get asked a lot about is freezing. First off, how do you freeze? And then second off, why would you freeze? So we're going to start off with the how, which basically it's when you don't last hit the enemy's troops and you just let them stay. You let them stay at your stairs or wherever you want. You make sure you thin out the wave enough that it doesn't immediately push into you, but you just allow it to kill your troops and you still kill the enemy's troops. Again, just keeping normally 3 from a wave alive and just not letting it continue to push into you. Now, as for why you would do this, there's 2 reasons. First off, if you're very ahead, you can leave your wave frozen like this and you can come aggressively like this and just poke the enemies while your wave is dying behind them. The range for being zoned off minions is about this far. It is criminally short. So if you just have wave frozen, you keep the enemies at their tower while their wave is diving back there, you'll be completely cutting them off from the souls. And then secondly would be if you're extremely behind and you just can't walk up at all and the enemies keep shoving wave into you and then they're doing the things I talked about with stealing your Sinners, taking their farm, bridge buffing, whatever. Say it's a 7 who likes to hard shove wave and then go farm. You would just take wave, and when he hard shoves it into you, you would just freeze it. You wouldn't immediately push it back. You would just freeze it. And one more thing which technically falls into the umbrella of freezing but really isn't, is if your teammate dies, you should not shoot the enemy's waves and you should freeze it, or like a little minor freeze of not pushing it and hoping the enemy's wave wins, because every minion you kill without your ally being there is just souls you're missing. So for example, if one person traded in each lane, it's great if the enemy is shoving the wave into you and you just let them do that, because if they kill 3 minions and their wave pushes, when their laner comes back, he's going to be minus 3 minion souls. When your laner comes back, he'll be able to get all these souls from the troopers. Hopefully this guide was shorter, although you know my guides. I hope you enjoyed. If you liked the video, you know what to do. Please comment any guides you'd like to see next. No promises. A lot of people recommend guides and they sound good and I script them out like halfway and I'm like, I can't hit the nail on the head like I would like to. So I apologize if you have a good idea for a guide and I just can't get it quite right, but I really do appreciate ideas. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, keep it real.